What's up, YouTube? So, seriously, you guys are something else. You really are. So I just got done putting in 189 fence posts with the old girl, and in the process of, she developed a problem. We got a pretty good fuel leak going on. So we're gonna dissect it and figure out why or where it's coming from. I'm pretty sure I know where. But we'll go ahead and get started taking it apart and figure it out and see what we can do about it. I also noticed a lot of oil. I'm pretty sure it's coming out of the exhaust. And I suspect that is because when I rebuilt the engine, I took the head and block in and had it all done. And I got stuff back, and I have seals, valve stem seals that should be in it that are not. So I have a sneaky suspicion that a lot of that oil is because it's leaking past the valve stem seals. So we're gonna go ahead and get onto that too while we're at it. See what we can't get done there. So anyway, let's get the cowl off and the hood off and see if we can figure out what's going on, where the leak's coming from. All right, so popped the hood and got to looking around, and you can kind of see. So this guy right here is the return, and also provides fuel to the thermal, not thermal. It's a little bitty burner basically in the intake manifold. Which is on this side. And you can see it right back in here. This fuel line and spade connector is essentially a little burner that will start a small fire in the intake tract to heat up the air. So on cold mornings when it has to start, it gets that warm charge air and it helps get the compression up and give it enough compression to get started. Anyways, you can kind of see the whole front of the tank all down that line is pretty wet with fuel. And there's a hose clamp up in there that could potentially be part of the leak. So we're gonna get into that and see if that's the cause. Unfortunately, I have to take a lot of stuff off to get there. This whole cowl panel has to come off, and so the hood has to go, steering wheel, gauge cluster, all that stuff. So let's get into it and see what we can find out. All right, we're a little more in there now. So I think it's actually leaking right here at the filler neck. You can kind of see my fingertip in there, where it returns into the tank. So that would definitely explain it. It's running right down the front of the tank and dripping out onto there and then running down both sides. I mean, we're wet with diesel, so at least I'm hoping, because if that's not the case, then I have a hole in the tank, and I really don't want that. So we'll keep going. What we may do is fire it up, see if we can determine if that's truly the case. And then I imagine while I'm in here, I should probably pull the valve cover off and see about putting those valve seals in. Though I don't know exactly how. Typically on something like that, I would put an air chuck into the spark plug hole and put air into the cylinder to keep the valves closed. It's a diesel, so that's not going to be a thing. But I might get creative with something. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this upper cowl off and see what we got. This is totally not a product placement, but if you guys need a decent little puller set, this guy can be had on Amazon for, like, I want to say $100 maybe ish. I've been super impressed with it. Again, like I said, not a product placement, but for the money, it's a really nice puller. Like for something like this steering wheel, that you've got to use a puller and you can't use your regular style steering wheel puller because there's no bolt holes in the steering wheel itself. So I've always had pretty good luck with these 3-jaw bearing pullers, and I'll see if I can hold the steering wheel with one hand and operate it with the other. I mean, it's just tight enough that you can't pull it off, if that makes sense. shaky camera. I think we're just about there. Oh, okay, well, don't be like me, because that'll just tear up the bottom of your steering wheel. So I guess we're gonna go with a different plan. Stay tuned. Well, no fault of the Polar. I went with that option and hit it on the bottom of the spoke. Like I said, no fault of the Polar. That's all on me because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. But yeah, that's as I say, it's a pretty decent little Polar for the money. Oh well, that just kind of ruins my day. That's too bad. All right, well anyway, so now the steering wheel's off. We'll keep digging in. All right, so we got the cowl loose and a better view in there. And sorry, you'll have to excuse my little one. She's outside playing with the dogs. It's definitely leaking out of there. I mean, you can see it all over the top of the tank. It's all wet. So we're gonna go ahead and pull those clamps in that piece of line. And the problem with this is I don't really have clamps that are that small. And I don't really have line that I may have to go to the parts store because, I mean, well, that one seems pretty tight. This one here is clamped down as tight as it'll go, and obviously it's loose. Where this one is fairly tight, so we may go fish around in the parts store real quick and see. Yeah, there you go. Pretty wet. We'll go fish around in the parts store and see if we can find us a hose clamp that'll maybe get small enough, or a tiny fuel injection clamp if they make them that small. But first I'm gonna have to find a stubby screwdriver and see if I can get in there and get that apart. And then I don't know if that's wet because it's running down the line or if that fitting's leaking. So yeah, a little bit more to look into. I don't really see much fuel on the bottom of this, so I feel like that's pretty good. I think it's probably just running down this line and all over everything else. So let's see what we can get. All right, so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and wedge this light in here, start it up and see if we can see anything leaking out of that. Now, I'm not entirely positive that I will, because I know this return is based off of pressure system. Stop, you two, get along. Goofs. I know this system's based off of pressure, line pressure in the engine, and so that's increased. Obviously, the higher RPMs you go, and I'm not gonna be able to put a load on it sitting here in the garage. But we'll see if we can get anything out of it and at least kind of confirm my suspicions. But like I said, I mean, the top of the tank all around the filler neck's wet. So, and I typically don't fill this thing all the way to the top. So I don't believe it's sloshing out or anything like that. It's a pretty constant drip down the side. But let's see if we can fire it up in here and make a little smoke out of it. Dang, she's loud, especially without the hood on standing right next to it. So there you go. I mean, I wiped it all down before I did that, and you can see that it's already wet around my fingers. So let's grab us a hose clamp and see if we can get that stopped, and hopefully this will be a quick, easy fix, because I don't really feel like taking it all the way apart. So let me see what I can find. So what I was doing there is I had my finger over the return hole that's in the filler neck. So we're gonna see if that stayed dry with a new clamp on it. And yes, it did. So that's more pressure, obviously. That's a pressurized return. When I block that off, and you could see once I remove my finger, quite a bit of fuel squirted out. It appears to be dry, so I think we're gonna call that fixed. I suspect it was this clamp that just wasn't getting it done, and it's pretty well bottomed out. So yeah, there we go. I mean, I think, or at least I hope that's the fix for it. I hope for once it's an easy one, because here lately all my junk's leaking on the floor and it drives me nuts. I mean, obviously this was leaking fuel. Went through and did the transmission on this pile, and it yeah, it's still got a diaper underneath it because she still got a drip. Yeah, so that's my luck lately. Of course, it's all happening right here before it gets cold outside. You know, most of us in Indiana can tell by the trees that winter's coming. So I'm going to do a little research and debate on whether or not to pull this valve cover while it's this far apart, and see if there's a viable way to put valve seals on it without pulling the head back off, because I say I can't pressurize the cylinder with any stuff that I have readily available to me. So I'm gonna see if there's an easy fix for that. So there may be a part 2 to this video in the near future, but if you got any questions, or want to know anything about the tractor or whatever, let me know in chat and I'll answer them the best I can. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a good evening.